So, welcome. How are you today after the dinner yesterday? Okay. I hope you like this presentation. I would like to tell you a little bit about TMMI. The first question is, who've heard about TMMI? Eric, don't raise hands, I know. Okay, not so bad. Okay, so I would like to tell you how, in fact, in practice, can we a little bit advance our testing processes and organization with this standard, let's say. So, first thing, I would like to tell you a little bit about the improvement itself. What is improvement, why we think it's important, or maybe not. Maybe you can challenge it. Then, what options do we have actually to improve things? From the easiest one to the most complicated one, or more complicated one. Then a little bit about TMMI. Just one disclaimer, I will not going to tell you everything about TMMI because it's not possible in this time slot that we have. If you are interested about the framework itself, I think here you have the best person to ask, Eric van Wanendal, who is actually the main author of TMMI scheme. And at the end, I would like to tell you a little bit about my story with TMMI, how I used TMMI to improve our software project, run in Agile, so-called Agile. Then we improved the process using some TMMI practices. So, first thing, do you think that we really need to improve testing processes? I wasn't sure, actually. My first experience with testing was a project that was more or less organized, structured, everything went fine. The project was running, testers were happy, the team were happy. I didn't see really a need for process improvement, for any improvement at all, because things were working. Then I switched the project. And again, of course, I thought everything will be perfect. We know what we are doing. We know the team. We know the tools that we are using. Everything should be working fine. And in reality, it happens that it's not really working. In reality, it appeared that the processes that we are using are not matching the reality, are not matching the customer, the context. The processes, the approaches that we used in several other projects were just not adjusted to the context. What is more, the old experiences that we are using appear to be not sufficient. They were just too formal. They were just too, let's say, bureaucratic to match the current perspectives. So that was the first time when I learned, okay, the things that I used to do are not really working everywhere. Yeah, so that is why I learned that sometimes perhaps we need to stop and improve things. So what options do we have, actually? The first thing, the easiest solution, I would say, is the Deming cycle. Perhaps you have heard about this. PDCA. That is actually the basis for, I would say, almost all, if not all, process improvement efforts. The main idea behind Deming cycle is that first, you need to plan for the improvement. And of course, this means that you need to know what you are going to improve. And of course, it means that you need to know what are you doing bad. Because if you are doing things in good manner, there is actually no need to improve. Yeah? So first thing is to realize the need for improvement and to know what to improve. Then you need to plan the improvement, then you need to do it. Yeah? So implement the improvement actions, like some new techniques, some new approach perhaps, some new tools, some change of mindset. Then you need to check if it is working. And that is the step that is sometimes missed. Yeah, we are doing things and we are forgetting to check if they are working or not. If they are working or not working, we need to act. So we need to plan for the next improvement or adjust things. This is the first thing that we can use for process improvement. The second one, and now we are going into more hardcore things, standards. Okay. I'm not sure what is your impression or the experience with standards. Most people react on the word standards in quite an ugly way. Standards are not bad. Standards are things that were invented by international people working in the software, in the domain, let's say. So standards can help us to do things that were already checked, using practices, using templates, using approaches that are already internationally checked. So the risk of making any mistakes is lowered. Not reduced, let's be honest, but lowered. So this is the second thing. You can use different standards. For organization improvement, you can also use so-called maturity models. And TMMI is one of these models. Perhaps you've heard about CMMI. CMMI is working on the organizational level, and TMMI is, let's say, extending the CMMI scope for the strictly testing purposes. So these standards are working together perfectly. What you can also use is, for example, TPI Next, invented by Sujati. These are just examples of different standards, different models for process improvement. And how it is working, actually. I would like to give you a very short overview about TMMI, how it's built. It's built based on so-called process areas. I will show you these process areas in just a few moments. Then we have something called specific and generic goals, and we have practices, specific and generic. And the standard itself, the framework itself, is documented in the form of document. You can download this document for free, absolutely for free, and use it, just use it. And this is perfect with TMMI. You can just take it and use, nothing more. The only thing that you need to know is to understand how it's working. So this is more or less how the standard is built, and this creates so-called process framework, and that is the framework. TMMI is so-called level framework. So the maturity levels represent the process maturity, actually. The maturity is, what is the practical meaning of maturity? This is the ability of the process to be repeatable, which means the risk of strange behavior, the risk of omissions is lowered. Yeah? How it's working? We have 5 maturity levels, starting from the first one, initial. Initial means more or less we know that testing exists. Good for us. Then we have the second level, manage. The process is managed, which means that we have, for example, something like test strategy. Have you heard about this? Test strategy. Have you seen it? Good. Good. That's the problem sometimes, that we already want to do testing, but we have no strategy for it. And that's a little bit strange, because in this case, we are expecting good results. Yeah, that's not working this way. So on the second level, we have test strategy, we have test policy, we have planning, we have monitoring. Yeah, so basically, we have all the activities that allow us to make the process running. Then we have the process defined. Defined means the process is more or less integrated in the software development lifecycle. At this level, we have something that is quite useful for testers, like test organization. We know our place in the organization. We have something, for example, like test department or test team working on the organizational level. We have something like test training program. So testing is recognized as a profession, not something that is helping developers, more or less. That's something that is really an IT profession. We have, from the more important things, we have non-functional testing. So at this level, we recognize the value of non-functional testing. And just to remind you, non-functional testing like usability, like reliability, like performance, these characteristics are sometimes much more important than functions. And TMMI is recognizing it to ensure that your processes make sure you don't have to focus only on functions, you need to focus also on quality attributes. Then we have level 4. The process is measured, which means we have metrics, we are able to control the process. And the last level is process optimization, and what is fantastic on this level, not sure if you see it, but this is defect prevention. Testing is used to prevent defects, not to find them. Finding them is cool. It's sometimes very fun if you see a failure or breaking the software. But to be honest, the value from finding defects, it's not really big, because this is just stating, okay, it's not working good. The more value is to prevent the defects. And at this level, we use the testing to prevent defects. Yeah? So this is the highest level of maturity. Okay, and what you have here are these process areas. How it's working then? This is copy-paste from the TMMI standard, and this is what I would like to show you, how the TMMI is actually working. This is copy-paste from exactly this level number 2, process managed, and this is about risk assessment. So, specific goal for performing a risk assessment. Then we have specific practices. Yeah, this is, let's say, overview of the chapter. And here, you have the content. And this is how TMMI is looking like. Yeah, you have something like a guide, what to do to ensure that you, as an organization, as a team, are meeting TMMI practices or specific level. And if you are afraid about TMMI, you don't have to, because if you look at this slide, you will see that there is nothing like you need to use Jira or Bugzilla or whatever. You need to ensure that something is done. That's all. The way, the mean, the tool that you are using, it's up to you. Yeah, so this means that the process, the framework is really, I would say, universal and generic. You can use it actually without any dependencies with the environment, with the tools, technology that you are using. And how it's working. You have the specific goal here, you have the specific practice, define product risk categories, and here you have what is also helpful, example work products. This is some guide for you. What document, what artifact should be an output of this activity. Yeah. Then you have sub-practices. And this is very directly guide to you. You should determine risk product categories. How? Here you have examples. So you can select your own ones, but if you have no idea what examples of risk can be here, you can use this classification. Then you have the next step, and so on and so on. So the framework is giving you more or less the detailed examples and guidelines how to ensure that you are meeting some specific things, like practices, like goals. What is also helpful is glossary. And this is also a part of the TMMI standard, the glossary. Because without glossary, we are not sure what we are talking about. Yeah? So if you're in your organization, if you have a problem that some teams, some people are not understanding each other or are using different terms for the same meaning, then you can use this glossary and just use this terminology. That helps to communicate strictly. Okay, so this is more or less about TMMI. If you would like to know more, you can just simply go to the TMMI website, download the standard. This is not a big document. As I said, it's for free. A lot of materials are for free. And you can just go through it. Then how can it be working in practice? And let me give you an example of my real case story, real case adventure with real usage of TMMI standard in project. What we had an agile project, actually more or less Scrum. Yeah. Why more or less, you will find out in a second. So the project was multinational. The project was geographically distributed. The project was aiming to develop e-commerce system, supporting some medical areas. We had a team, development team. We have product owners. We had all the things that are related with Scrum. And we had also some problems, as always. Okay. So the first important problem that we have was about the testing itself. Because we had a problem like that. You are a Scrum team, and of course, there are developers in Scrum team. Developers, which means who are testers, what the testers should do, what testing levels, what testing types, what they should do inside the team. So the scope, the area of responsibilities were not really defined. Of course, you can say, okay, we have Scrum Guide, and Scrum Guide should explain it. No, it doesn't. Actually, in details, it does not explain such things. So we had a problem. Who are testers? How they work in the team. Another problem we had, poor communication. And sometimes it was really ridiculous because people were collocated in the same room, and they were not talking to each other because they didn't know who actually is doing what, who actually is responsible for what. Product owner was trying to communicate with the keyword trying, but she wasn't really good in this area because she was coming strictly from the business, so she knew business very well. She had no really understanding about software development processes. What else? No work standards. And we had a serious problems with it because every member of the team was producing artifacts in its own manner. So we have a lot of different templates, different way of doing things, different way of documenting things. So working with this documentation, reading this documentation, understanding was really difficult. Related problem with quality of requirements. And the most important problems we had was problem related with user stories, which means we have user stories that were simply not completed. It was like, as a user, I want something. And you know, for what? How to test it? Something more? Nothing. We had problems that development team had serious problems with completing the sprint because the sprints were based on actually incomplete requirements. And the last thing that was really scaring, product owner and the Scrum Master who were asking me as a quality manager, what the hell is quality assurance? What the hell is quality management? Because this was the first time they heard it. So these were the challenges that we had. And solution. The first solution, the first area of the improvement that I did as a quality manager was trying to structure, to systemize the testing processes. Actually, it was not only the testing process, it was the quality management process, but I will tell you only about the testing area. So what I've done, I knew about TMMI because I learned about this some time ago. So I just used TMMI as a base for improvement. How? I took some practices for level 2, from level 3 and 4, and map it into actual activities in our projects. So what we've done, the tools that we were using was Jira and Confluence. Perhaps you know these tools. Confluence was for knowledge management as a repository. In Confluence, I documented the strategy. It was not a big documentation. It was just very high-level document about, one-page document about our approach to testing, with information that we have some test types, we have some test levels. Our approach to testing is for functional testing, it's that. For non-functional testing, something more. We had information about test environments. We have information about the way we are planning to control the process and to report the results to stakeholders. We had information about, some obvious information about who is who in this team, because it was also problematic. Imagine that you are working with the customer, and there are something like 15 people on the customer side, and the customer does not know who are you in this team. So we documented this in Confluence. In Confluence, we had also all the progress reports, all the information about sprint scope. It was just a simple filter from Jira, nothing more. In Jira, we had all the workflow, we have requirements, we have test case management. Actually, we were using here Zephyr for Jira as an extension to Jira. We used Jira for defect management and for requirements management. And all the knowledge stuff, reporting stuff, let's say management stuff, was in Confluence. And it was working, actually. We didn't use the whole TMMI. Why? Because there was no need for it. Yeah? My aim as a quality manager was just to improve this one singular project. So I used selection of TMMI practices, and I built an approach based on this. Just to give you a tip that perhaps you can use in your practices, the first initial version of our test strategy means this thing here, was done in mind map. Do you know this technique, mind mapping? So we used mind map to create our, let's say, draft strategy for testing. Just to structure, just to understand what actually we want to do, what we can do. And only after that, after creating this mind map, we move it to the Confluence and detailed. And that was our testing documentation. What is good from this approach, everyone who was, let's say, authorized could access it. So the customer was aware about what and how we are doing. So our, let's say, professional image in front of the customer was improved because we didn't hide anything. The customer was fully aware about what we are doing, how we are doing. The customer could access all the reports. The customer could see what are our plans, what are our approaches. The same story with product owner. The product owner could access it, could give us some feedback, like, for example, I would need to have more coverage or something. What also we've done in scope of improvement was taking care about this, problems with quality of artifacts. So we actually adapt some practices from quality assurance for quality control, and we apply it for ensuring quality of your requirements artifact for user story. And we just simply used a practice that perhaps you know, definition of ready. Definition of ready. Have you heard about this? If not, it's a really perfect solution for ensuring that you are not accepting things that are not really ready for it to be developed. Sample definition of ready. User story is ready when it meets invest criteria. User story is ready when there are some acceptance tests written for this user story. User story is ready when the team agrees that it's ready. These are a kind of obvious criteria that ensure that something that is not ready is not coming here. Because if a requirement that is not ready is going into the scope of sprint, I'm pretty sure you will have a problem. Because something that is not ready will not be developed. Yeah? So these were a kind of mechanism, tricks that we used to improve our processes. So that is all from my experience that I would like to tell you. Again, if you would like to know more, you have me, you have Eric van Vanendal here. We can tell you more about TMMI. And we have also, yes, please come. I have some support with me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to say a couple of words.
Do you hear her?
I tried to speak a little bit up. We need to, it's only 1 minute saying, thank you. Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Okay, so it's better, thank you. So I'm Erika, I'm from SQA, the International Software Quality Institute, headquartered in Germany. And we are a global exam provider, which means we have a huge portfolio for certification examinations, including ISTQB, but we are also the official exam provider for TMMI. So I have some brochures with me, and if you're interested in taking exams, you as an individual or as a group for your company, you can please take a brochure. I leave also my business card, you can talk to me, and then we can discuss how we can arrange exams for you or your group. That's it.
So basically, maybe it's not clear, but you can be a TMMI professional. That can be examined, yeah? So this is, TMMI is working not only as you can download and use it, that's perfectly fine, but you can also, if you want to prove something and become more professional, you can take the exam. The exam is not really rocket science. It's more or less based on the ISTQB rules, so it's not a big deal. And what is also interesting, you can become TMMI assessor, and that's really fun. You can be a kind of auditor, going to an organization and auditing if the organization is meeting some TMMI levels, some TMMI practices. So you can also use TMMI as your way of improving your testing career. Yeah, so additional benefit from the standard. Okay, so again, thank you.
So I will leave the brochures there next to the microphones.
Okay. And the last word from me, perhaps you can think that, okay, TMMI, it sounds like waterfall or whatever, not really working to or adjusted to current reality. I need to worry you. TMMI has also some version for agile methods, so you can also use the adaptation of TMMI for agile. So it's absolutely working in agile environment too. I could prove it really without any advertisement. I tried on my project and it's working. maybe not on the whole scope, but at least some practices that will guide you how to improve your processes. So, thank you very much. If you have any questions, now I think it's the great time.
So, Karolina, first of all, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Maybe it was already said, but I have missed it. My question is about the documentation. Where did you keep it? In which tool? And the reason behind it, that I'm working in a rather big project and technically very complex.
Okay.
And we are moving from the waterfall, pure waterfall, to the agile. So the question is what to do with this huge documentation, not to lose the knowledge.
You can use this.
Confluence.
Confluence. Yes.
Okay.
Confluence in Jira. If you're working in a really complex environment, then perhaps it won't be sufficient for you. But to be honest, I'm not pretty sure because I've worked in complex projects for banking industry. And Confluence in Jira was enough for us.
Was okay,
perfectly
yes.
enough. Yeah? Confluence as a knowledge base. You can use Confluence like, for example, a repository for all test cases or requirements, and you can manage these artifacts through Jira. Or you can also store your test cases, your stories in Jira, and here you can store the whole overview documentation. So there are at least two options how to manage documentation in these tools.
Okay, thank you. So you didn't use TestBench or other tools? Only these two, yes?
Jira plus Zephyr for Jira, it was perfectly enough.
Okay, thank you.
In the worst case, what is also working for me, one of my most critical projects for banking sector, so quite serious sector, I would say, we used Confluence plus Excel.
Excel.
It was working, really. Excel. So test cases stored in Excel. In Confluence, we have requirements like separate page for each requirement, and then on this page we simply download these Excels with test cases. That was customer requirements that they wanted to have Excels because of something. It was working. The only thing that you need to understand are actually what you want to achieve this with documentation, what graduation, what level of documentation, and that will help you to select actually the proper tools.
Thank you so much. One more little question. I'm not very familiar with definition of ready and definition of done. Do I understand right? Definition of ready is an input criteria. What
Yes.
we are ready to work with.
Yes.
And definition of done, exit criteria.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So definition of ready is working like entry criteria for sprint in this case. Yeah?
Okay.
We will not take anything before it's not ready. Definition of done is, let's say, acceptance criteria for an item.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks. Two important quality gates that I will strongly recommend you to use.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. My question is, you describe it like bringing happiness to all, and it's quite a seamless process when you adapt it to your company, but maybe you can tell us some pitfalls and what struggles can be in this applying this approach. Thanks a lot.
You mean TMMI?
Yeah.
Okay. I would be careful with using TMMI like directly. I mean, you are going through the specification of TMMI and you are trying to implement everything at once. I would be very careful because for your organization, for your needs, perhaps not all TMMI would be appropriate. So the first thing that you would need to understand again is what problems do you have, what needs to be improved, and then you would need to go to TMMI and choose what practice could help you. And that is also important to remember that my personal opinion is that we have standards. Standards are absolutely valuable, perfect, but it is not a good solution to use standards just for the sake of using standards. Standards are perfectly helpful, can guide us, but for example, implementing TMMI just for the sake of implementing TMMI, it's not a good solution. It is the same story as using Scrum because it's fancy. Yeah. So that is something that I would like to be careful. Just to select properly, what are you going to do?
So it's better to apply only if I understand that we have a problem which can be fixed with this approach, yeah? Without it, it's...
You can do something like a, how it's called, quick scan, quick assessment, TMMI. So at first step, you can, for example, evaluate your organization according to meeting these practices, and then you will see what is lacking, what problems do you have. And then you can either by yourself or asking someone external from help, you can choose what can bring you value. The first step for me is always investigating the problem. So analysis of the SS. What state do I have? Yeah. Comparing to this, comparing to TPI next, whatever you want. Yeah. First thing, evaluation. And that is actually the first step, precondition for any improvement. Evaluation of the SS.
Thanks. Thanks.
Yeah.
Questions? No more? Okay. The best question was?
The best question was? Aha, because I have motivation. This lady. Sorry. Thank you. So the second one I will give. Please. Thank you very much.